Hey everyone, it is day 21, and that's a multiple of 7. Um, okay, quick note before anything else. I completely forgot to mention t shirts yesterday. I do try to show them every day, and I was so distracted with how yesterday's singing work went, it slipped past me. I honestly hope that underscores what state I was in by the end of the day. Um, but I'm back on track. Today's t shirt says Take That Depression, and it is from Has Been Hotel Season 1. I am so on a Has Been kick. It is some fantastic music. I'm actually considering bringing one or two pieces in for personal repertoire practice. Let's see. Right. Before I cover anything today, I do want to mention something coming up. I have surgery scheduled for next Friday, which is May 1st. So there may be a slight shift in how the journals come out for those few days, at least around that time. I'm currently working on ideas. As for the surgery, it's fairly non invasive, and from everything I've been told, recovery should be really quick. So I'm not expecting a long interruption. But I wanted to say that up front in case things look a little different over the next few days around that. I think that's all of the business stuff. Let's talk about today. Today ended up hitting a lot harder than I expected. This morning was supposed to be simple. I went in to take 135, just planning to do a calibration, which for me right now is usually just the first half of Be Prepared. And I ended up running the full thing because I was just so in the piece. I forgot to stop. I didn't actually make a decision to continue to cross the line. I do remember making a thought going, okay, this is where I cut off. But somewhere in that middle of that first half, there's not really a clear cut point, checkpoint, or a sign that says stop here. And there really wasn't a moment where I thought, right, this is the time to stop. I was doing the piece, and it just kept going, and I went with it. Everything felt like it was connected the entire time. There really wasn't any sense of managing phrases, checking breath, thinking ahead to what was coming up next. It was just moving line to line, phrase to phrase, intent to intent, interacting with the characters, section to section, no interruption. And even as it was happening, there wasn't really an awareness of this is going really well. It was more like it was just in that moment. And a lot of that was really new. From start to finish, everything just felt easy. And not a passive lay back and don't work at it thing, but in a way where I knew what I was going to do, and I did it. And even after the take was over, I'd actually come into the take with a little lower morning voice than usual. Typically, one take will bring my voice back out of morning voice, but after this morning's take, that initial one, my voice didn't snap back, which suggests that I'm not overtaxing it and I'm letting it position more naturally. It usually does snap back, but it stayed in that same state, like nothing had really changed between waking up, singing, stopping. So the low notes that usually are really weak were there from the start. The first A1 landed in a way that honestly, it really surprised me because it was solid, it was present, there was buzz, it was at the same level of everything else. It was that note that says, you can hit that. Of course, as the song went on, there still was some decay to the A1s, and by the time I hit the end of the piece where I got the A2 to A1 slide, it just sort of got quieter. But nothing ever was out of control. Everything was put together the way I wanted it put together. So, after I do a recording, I think about how did it feel, and then I go to playback and I make my notes about, well, this did this and that did that. And today I kind of found myself in a really strange position. I'm listening to the playback, looking for what needs to be noted, and I couldn't actually grab onto anything. There wasn't anything to find. Um, the playback actually didn't give any sense of effort, just performance. And like I said, I was actually kind of dazed for about a half hour after that. I figured that was great. I don't really need to do another take today. Go on. Yeah, really kind of knocked me on my ass. I'm still kind of thinking about it. This afternoon felt like sort of it was continuing. However, it was without that initial surge carrying it. Let's see. First take settled into a kind of baseline, everything connected, everything, though the energy was a little low. And what stood out, nothing fell apart. Structure held, even when little bits felt weaker, it still held. Second take, I managed to push the energy up, and see, that's where the contrast became really clear. Let's see. So I always talk about the F4 that occurs 4 times in the chorus. And the first 2 just came out. They were there. I didn't have to reach for them. I didn't have to pick at them. They were just there. But then for the third one, there is that vowel where if I say sometimes instead of sometimes, it flattens out. And I felt that word coming on, and I could feel it. What was really weird there was that the F4 was okay, but I then tripped over the D sharp 4 that followed it. So that was probably the clearest example of that difference between letting everything just work and thinking about what you have to try to help it. Now, then I hit the third take. So as I always define it, it's first a calibration take, then an overcompensation take, and then the performance level take. I hope I balanced everything out by then. And I could get that feeling of the energy rising, the adrenaline coming up, that performance state really beginning to lock in. Not as much as it had in like yesterday. So let's see. There was a moment in section 1. I often talk about the fact that it's all very quick syllables and then a sustain. And I have been running out of air on that sustain. And on that last take this afternoon, I felt like I was beginning to run out of air again. Now, that's normal. What wasn't normal was for about a split second, while things were feeling like they were about to fail and I'd lose that end note, something strange happened. I wasn't consciously thinking of what to do, because in general, my mindset now is whatever happens, happens. And the less I try to make something else happen, the better it comes out. So without trying to actually fix anything, it honestly felt like my breath and the support system in my system basically disagreed with each other as they were headed toward the precipice of the waterfall. And then there was a small internal conflict about what was going to happen, and they shifted, came to an agreement, and instead of collapsing, they both kind of pulled everything into shape, and the note did carry through. I did not run out of air. I realize there's a lot of visualization, and sometimes I look back on it and go, "Am I really thinking that?" But I am. Um, I didn't consciously decide to do anything, but my system um, kind of started looking for what solutions have been trained into it. Um, I could feel the difference between what would have happened normally and what did happen. And that moment also sort of lifted up the energy. I could hear in the audio that like all the rest of the retro engines had been clicked on at that point. Sections 2 and 3 together confirmed energy was continuous. Even if the sound shifted a little in the range, the notes were there. The approach into them still needs to smooth out, but they were getting into place. Section 4 is the interesting one. Section 4 is still the new member of the family. Its energy is actually being dragged up by the first 3 sections, but it's still new. I'm still thinking I need to recheck the melody from time to time, that I may be getting off of that. But because it's being garnered along by the rest of the piece, it's kind of wanting to do skateboard tricks like it's Big Brother Section 3, while it's still trying to learn how to actually balance on the skateboard. There's this realistic sight of what's happening and what I need to be doing off of session to make everything grow more evenly. Let's see. Biggest takeaway from today is that everything is holding together, and it is happening sometimes at multiple energy levels. But the difference now isn't accessing it, it's the capability that I have. It's how cleanly that energy gets delivered. I can feel the line between letting the system work and stepping in to manage it. Every time I cross that line, it shows up immediately in how the playback sounds. At the same time, the performance state doesn't feel like something I have to chase anymore. It's there. It shows up like it's answering its call to perform, and I can just stay inside of it and take care of the interaction on an artistic level with the music. Uh, there's definitely a part of me that wants to keep going after a successful day. It's like, that sounded really good. I want to do another one. Push further. Everything great. The energy is now up fuller. However, I do in actually just about all the time practice, if I've had a really good, solid experience, I stop. I'm done for that session, because if I try to continue on, I get out of the mentality of let go, and I get into the mentality of either reproduce the previous version, or try to get past it. And that's where everything doesn't work. So I figure I got a good one. Let's figure out what wasn't completely there outside of practicing it and bring that into the system for the next time. So, yeah, I've got that limit now. So, how do I best put that? It's about letting what's already there become consistent rather than daring myself to the next levels. I'm going to actually shift now because one other thing came up today, kind of on the side, but in a way connected. So one of the people that I watch on YouTube who does reaction videos is Peter Barber, who is also one of the members of the Bass Gang. He was watching the performer Morissette performing Golden. The interesting thing was she was sitting, not standing, but she was sitting in her studio. She was performing it live for, I guess, maybe Patreons or subscribers or whatever. And she did it all in a single take. And that combination, live, seated, one take, what seemed to prompt Peter to comment on how surprising that she was pulling off a fantastic performance without tuning or compression. He may have said that there was compression, but it was the tuning that caught my ear. It actually really kind of got me curious. And somewhere in that, I made the connection between tuning and auto-tune. So it was like, all right, making sure that pitches don't waver and all that stuff. And my first instinct was, I've got recordings of myself now. I'd love to try it and see how it sounds. Even as I'm making that decision, I'm coming to a realization. I started contemplating the potential problems that could come out of me playing with auto-tune now in my process. I'm still hashing out my decision about whether or not I'm going to play with it or not, but because I haven't decided, I'm not going to jump on it. See, the most important thing to me is I don't want to run the risk of hearing, I guess the best way to describe it would be false perfection, and let that, either consciously or worse, subconsciously, guide me off the rails, break the progress I'm making, because now I have this artificial view of how I could sound. Now, honestly, I don't think I'd listen to it and think, wow, is that my potential? I'm really a cynic. My general reaction to it would probably be more along the lines of, damn, now I want to know how these other singers really sound. Because I often feel like I'm like really nowhere near their levels, and I probably still aren't, aren't, whatever. I probably still am not anywhere near their levels, but that beautiful perfection that I hear, really thinking about auto-tune kind of helps me realize that there is a path, that I'm not fighting against absolute perfection. That again, I'm still chewing on whether I want to play with it, and it kind of is like, no, not right now. Yeah, with that, I think I have managed to wrap up my third week of publicly journaling my process. I keep being surprised, outside my rehearsals, outside the video, outside outlining what I want to touch on, to realize how much of this journey and plan that I'm on that I've only begun to scratch the surface of. There may be a couple of episodes coming up where I don't actually talk about the practice for the day, but some of the other things that I've got going on in my goals to, as I've mentioned, start my own a cappella group and perform. But more on that as it comes. That's day 21. I'll see you tomorrow. And as always, later.